You're tuning in to Creepy Time, where we bring you chilling creepy stories and eerie urban legends every day at 6 p.m. To support Creepy Time, please don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave your thoughts in the comments so we can discuss the story together. Now, let's dive into today's tale. Rules to follow when working at Disney. The black envelope appeared on my desk without warning. It didn't come through the mail. There were no postage marks, no return address, no signs of delivery. It simply sat there like it had always belonged. The paper was dense and cold to the touch, as though it had been stored in a freezer. The only mark on the front was a naming mine written in dark red ink that seemed to have soaked into the fibers of the envelope rather than sit atop it. It was written in cursive, with strokes deliberate and precise. I stared at it for a long time, trying to recall if I'd spoken to anyone recently who might have sent something. No one came to mind. I should have left it alone. I should have called security. But curiosity, that reckless impulse buried in the back of our minds, always wins. I slid my finger under the seal and opened the envelope. Inside was a thick cream-colored card and a black access badge. The card was textured like parchment and printed in the same red ink as the envelope. The message was short. "Hello, old friend. It's been a while since we last spoke. I know you remember our conversations in university, the ones where we talked about what hides behind the curtain of public entertainment and how every smile has a shadow behind it. Now, I have something to show you. Something real, something worth remembering. Come to Anna, the 3rd of October, midnight. Use the badge. Come alone. Don't tell anyone. Some truths are too dangerous to share. Jonathan Thaneva. P.S. The dreams will begin tonight. Don't be afraid. They're just preparing you. Jonathan. I hadn't heard that name in over a decade. We were close during our university years, drawn together by a shared obsession with psychology, mythology, and the hidden mechanics of mass entertainment. He was the kind of person who never trusted anything at face value, the kind who would pause in the middle of a Disney ride and wonder what wasn't being shown. He had a particular fascination with Disney, especially the idea that behind its cheerful facade, there were layers of control, conditioning, and manipulation most people refused to see. He disappeared not long after graduation. No public posts, no LinkedIn, no alumni emails. He just faded out of existence. At the time, I assumed he'd gone off-grid, maybe chasing some obscure research path. I never imagined he'd resurface like this. I looked at the black badge. It had no text except for a single number etched deeply into its surface, 33. I hesitated. Then I booked the trip. On the night of the 3rd of October, I arrived in Anaheim under a gray sky and light drizzle. I kept a low profile, avoiding hotels near the park and opting for a nondescript chain motel a few blocks away. At 11:30 p.m., I called a cab. The driver was an older man with thinning white hair. He glanced at me in the rearview mirror as I gave him the address. "The park closes at 8, he said flatly. "No night events this time of year." I reached into my jacket and held up the black card. The driver looked at it for a second, nodded once, and drove without another word. The streets around Disneyland were nearly empty, even though the lights outside the park still glowed in bright yellows and purples. The gates were locked and the pathways deserted. It looked like a stage set after closing quiet, still but not asleep. We pulled up to a service gate on the far side of the park, near a set of delivery docks. A man in a maintenance uniform was waiting for me. He didn't introduce himself or ask for my name. He simply saw the badge, gave a slight nod, and turned to walk away. I followed him through the gate and into the park. It was disorienting to see Disneyland like this. No children, no families, no music. just echoing footfalls, the hum of electric systems, and the occasional rustle of wind through plastic foliage. We walked past closed food carts and shuttered souvenir stalls. The man led me into a maintenance corridor behind one of the themed areas, Adventureland, I think. We passed doors marked with technical instructions, exposed wiring, and long stretches of concrete tunnel that looked far older than anything in the rest of the park. We stopped in front of an industrial elevator with no visible floor buttons. He pulled a key from around his neck, inserted it into a panel, and turned. The elevator opened. He stepped aside, gesturing for me to enter. The elevator descended. Through a small window in the metal door, I could see sections of the park from behind the maintenance routes, the skeletons of rides, the empty interiors of character buildings, and then walls, concrete, utility pipes, thick metal grates. We were going underground. The elevator came to a halt with a soft chime. The door opened into a long hallway, dimly lit and lined with framed artifacts. I stepped out alone. I was underground, but this space didn't feel forgotten. It was curated. The first few frames I passed displayed aged memorabilia, early concept art, prototype ticket stubs, internal memos. But then it shifted. The displays began showing stranger things. Torn costumes, burned scraps of what looked like animation cells. One frame contained a photo on old one, in black and white, of Mickey Mouse smiling at a crowd of children, except his eyes had been inked out. I turned to the next exhibit. It was a glass case, and inside it was a worn leather-bound journal. It rested open to a page filled with handwritten names and dates. Most of them were crossed out in red. Next to some names were small notations: refused protocol, attempted to flee, asked about room 0. At the very bottom of the list was a name freshly written: Jonathan Thaniva. The ink was still wet. I looked up. At the end of the hallway was a wooden door with a brass plate. It read simply, "Authorized personnel only." It wasn't locked. The room beyond was circular and windowless, about 10 meters across. The walls were covered with old CRT monitors, some flickering with static, others displaying looping footage of Disneyland rides in motion, though they moved jerkily and the sound didn't match the images. In the center of the room was a steel table with a series of folders, VHS tapes, and what looked like a child's drawing. A stick figure with mouse ears labeled him. I sat down. The tapes were labeled with project names: Dream Synthesis Trials, Cognitive Conditioning Unit, Subject Group A. I didn't have a way to play them, but the folders contained summaries. One document described an initiative called Zomero, a long, decommissioned psychological research program allegedly tied to environmentally immersive behavioral conditioning. The language was clinical, but unmistakable. They were using the park's themed environments to test psychological reactions in children. One paragraph caught my attention. It referenced the hidden sector of the park, known only as Section 0, used for prototype testing. The document stated plainly that access is limited to Class 33 clearance or above, and that data collected from subject batch 1 remains active and volatile. Do not engage. I flipped through more pages. One described a security breach in 1986, during which a family accidentally accessed an unused tunnel leading to Section 0. The report said the family was removed from the premises and compensated. No lasting trauma observed. The notation beside it was more alarming. Subjects reassigned. Observation ongoing. Memory patching initiated. Suddenly I heard it. A soft, childlike laugh, echoing from somewhere beyond the walls. I stood, every part of me tense. I wasn't alone. I froze, every nerve pulsing. The childlike laughter echoed again, soft, knowing, entirely out of place and yet perfectly present. It bounced around the circular room, fading into static before hissing back into intelligibility. My heart raced and sweat beaded at my temples. I wanted to run, but curiosity clawed me forward. There was a corridor opposite the door, dark and narrow, lit by a single flickering fluorescent bulb. The edge of the bulb cast long, wavering shadows against the concrete walls. Armed with nothing but the black badge and a racing mind, I took a deep breath and stepped forward. The corridor led to a doorway labeled Section B4, Dream Conditioning Chambers. The letters were stenciled white, chipped and worn. I pushed through. Inside, the room was vast and silent, save for electrical hums and distant dripping. Rows of metal-framed pods lined both sides, each pod fitted with thick glass lids. Most were empty, but a few contained forms lumped, silent, motionless, as though sleeping. One pod held a figure small enough to be a child. I couldn't see its face in the dim red light. On a nearby console, a monitor glowed. I punched a button. The screen flickered to life, showing a still image, a child's hand reaching toward a cartoon mouse. Beneath it, text scrolled, Subject, Mary, age 6, session length, 2H. The data log displayed heart rate spikes, brainwave irregularities, and notations. Memory consolidation active. Dream triggers pending. I stepped back. My hands shook. It felt unreal, like something from a twisted medical drama or dystopian film, but it was real, and it was happening here. A soft creak behind me made me spin. A door at the far end of the room was opening, and two figures stepped out silhouetted, deliberate. They spoke quietly, their voices clinical. Phase 3 is scheduled for tonight. Authorization expires at 0200. All pre-operations green. Subject group contains 4 entries. Waiting clearance? They moved on, closing the door behind them. I watched them go. If they closed me in, I would be trapped here forever. I backed out, not daring to make a sound. Back in the hallway, I leaned against the wall. My breath came hard. What was this place? What kind of operation was Jonathan talking about? I touched the badge number 33. My mind flashed back to the names crossed out in the hallway journal. Jonathan's name was fresh. Had he already been pulled in? Was this his doing, or was he a victim? I had to find more answers. I moved further down the hallway. The corridor split into branches, one labeled Memory Storage, B5, another Dream Harvesting Center, B6. I chose Memory Storage first. The door creaked open into a low-ceilinged room-packed floor to ceiling with labeled lockers. Each locker was labeled with a name, an age, and a date archives of minds. I noted, Jason M., age 8, visit date 1987, memory type, first roller coaster experience. Emily R., age 5, visit date 1992, memory type, birthday meeting Minnie Mouse. Mark L., age 6, visit date 1979, memory type, test flight and indoor airplane ride. As I walked the aisles, I felt the air tremble. The lockers buzzed faintly, as though microprocessors were keeping them live. Human memory packaged and stored. It felt obscene. At the far end, a small trough held open a locker labeled Jonathan Thanova, status, active, group, A, access, pending processing. My chest felt cold. Jonathan hadn't pulled me in. He was still locked in the system. Someone was orchestrating all this, someone drawing him deeper. I closed the locker compartment gently and walked on. At the final door, Dream Harvesting Center, I paused. The laughter echoed again, clearer now, like a child calling out for help. I pressed my ear to the door, nothing audible beyond. Then a flicker on the door's small viewport. A pair of black eyes peered out staring at me. When I stepped closer, they blinked and vanished. Someone inside was watching. I pulled the door open. The room was stark white and bright, intentionally contrasting the rest of the subterranean maze. In the center stood a large cylindrical chamber with cables and tubes snaking into it. A child lay inside, conscious but sedated, eyes closed. Screens tracked brain activity dream patterns. Beside the chamber stood a woman in a lab coat, her back to me. I couldn't see her face, but I heard her speaking into an intercom. Subject David Stable. Initiating shock sequence. Dream feed funneling consistent, 80% retention. Begin harvest in 10 minutes. Priority, Liza, then Mary. She turned and saw me. Her expression didn't change. She removed a clipboard. Phase 4, observation unauthorized. Her voice was methodical, badge insufficient. Who are you? I asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she pressed a button. The room filled with a low humming, and the lights flickered. The child moaned softly. My heartbeat leaped. Please, this is wrong, I whispered. Her eyes didn't waver. Incorrect. This is necessary. The park is only part of it. She stepped forward. To reach her, I would have to cross into the chamber's perimeter. That's when I heard footsteps and then laughter everywhere. I backed away, stumbling through the doorway. She called after me, "You're next," and she meant me. Down the hall, I sprinted, taking turns I barely noticed. A faint red glow and pulsing sounds grew behind a mean alarm. Sirens? Maybe. Or laughter. A distorted voice echoed. Authorized. 33. Authorized. 33. Then steel shutters dropped behind me, cutting off one corridor, then another. I heard speakers crackle. Contained subject. Proceed to capture. My pulse raced. I had to find Jonathan. If he was still conscious and resisting, he was my ticket out. If he was gone, if it had taken him, I needed to stop it. I found the elevator, but it was inactive. Wires were cut. The panel displayed Maintenance Floor B7, deep archives. A hatch was open to a ladder descending. I climbed. The hatch closed above me. I plunged through darkness, landing on metal grating several levels down. The air was damp, musty, and chlorine-tinged. I could feel the concrete foundation beneath the park. My flashlight beam revealed rows of thick water pipes and electrical cables. The ladder above closed. No way back up. I had no choice. I plunged forward, following the pipes deeper into unknown territory. My phone showed 12% battery. I tried to call my friend Jane, but no signal. I was alone. Around a bend, I stumbled into a vault door. Painted words, Deep Archives, Classifedo, Not Enter. The seal was broken. Pushing inside revealed an enormous cavernous space filled with crates, servers, and massive storage tanks. Boxes were stenciled with symbols and childlike cartoon characters charred through the paint. They were labeled with years, 1965, 1974, 1983, all containing collected materials. In the middle of the room, I saw Jonathan. He wasn't slumped in a pod or scribbled in a locker. He was kneeling beside a portal device, wires radiating into a central console that looked like a twisted old lounge. His face was pale, drawn. He looked at me, eyes wide. He whispered, "It's too late." His voice trembled with fear and awe. His hand hovered over a red switch. I rushed forward. I grabbed his arm. He flinched. "Jonathan, what is this?" I demanded. "Dream engine," he mouthed. "They're harvesting us. They create the new him." He shook his head. "They're going to bring it out. Today. I'm shutting it down." Sirens blared. Metal doors began to hiss closed around the room, locks engaging. "Then stay down," I said. I pushed the switch and the console powered down with a penetrating whine. Lights faded to red standby glow. He collapsed. We have to leave, or they'll... The door sealed. Cameras clicked on. Speakers crackled. Subject located. Subject sedation imminent. He staggered to his feet. Outcome unknown. We must go. I nodded. Together, we backed toward the corner we came from, scanning for an exit. Ahead, a stairwell led upward out of wormhole depths back into maintenance tunnels I glimpsed earlier. We ran together, footsteps echoing in metal-lined shafts. Lights flickered as our lights bobbed across concrete walls. Every step was a risk guest surveillance, guards, automated systems. But we kept moving upward. Eventually, we reached the maintenance hallway from part 1. The door ahead was the one I had first entered through. We burst through into the framed artifacts hallway. We sprinted past the crossed out names in the journal. We raced out into the elevator room with the monitors and VHS tapes. A guard stepped into the room. He aimed a pharmaceutical dart gun at us. Jonathan pushed me to the floor. I raised my hands. The guard said, "Authorized 34 and above only." Jonathan said, voice firm despite exhaustion, "He's with me. He's class 33, but has commission override for shutdown mission. I am priority extract." The guard hesitated. Something on Jonathan's face changed. He nodded. "Follow me." He led us to the elevator. We rode up. The elevator opened into a corridor bathed in yellow cleaning light. We walked quickly past maintenance staff and back to the gate. The driver from earlier was waiting outside under a flickering lamp. He didn't ask questions. He saw us, opened the back door, and we climbed in. He drove off. I looked at Jonathan. His shoulders slumped. The world had shifted. As the gate closed and we crept back into city streets, I realized something horrible but undeniable. This wasn't just about Disney. It was about control seeded through childhood joy, cultivated in secrecy, harvested in the dark, and we were only beginning to scratch the surface. We settled into the back of the unmarked cab while the city lights smeared past. Jonathan leaned against the door, still trembling from our narrow escape. "Talk to me," I prompted softly. "What was that device? That dream engine?" He drew a shaky breath and closed his eyes. It wasn't just a rumor. Disney, or whoever's behind it, has been running these psychological conditioning experiments since at least the 1962nd. Section 0 started as a trial station for immersive memory conditioning. They believed that if they could harvest pure, unfiltered childhood joy emphasis on first visit moments, they could replicate and amplify it to control people subconsciously. I glanced at him. "You were part of it." He sighed, tossing his head back. "I was recruited in college. I was naive and curious. The badge, the name I was, just another subject group, flagged for resistance potential. They needed someone analytical. I thought I could expose them from the inside. I didn't anticipate how far it would go." I leaned forward, the city quiet beyond the tinted window. "What did they do to you?" Jonathan's face hardened. "I participated at first. Experiments on memory. They'd implant triggers through rides, sounds, smells. Then they'd harvest the memory. They recorded brain patterns, emotional peak responses. At first, I helped calibrate. I even attended debriefs after. But when they invented the dream engine, that's when I realized it was bigger than memory. It was shaping reality." I swallowed. "Shape reality how?" "There's a prototype, what they call the original entity. They built it in 1988. It's a construct, some kind of hybrid created from aggregated dream data. Imaginary at first, but they brought it into consciousness using the engine. They made it real. Part memory, part synthetic bioconstruct. So this thing we saw, is that it?" Jonathan's eyes were fixed on the window. Yes, it's in the core program, kept dormant until activation triggers. They engineered it to leak influence into the park environment, cheering crowds, sunset music, cotton candy smell, all designed to resonate with deep-seated memory pathways. A single thrill ride can produce a chain reaction. The idea is total psycho-emotional influence mass conditioning without direct touch. A shiver traveled down my spine. It's like subliminal mass hypnosis. He nodded, and they controlled the data flow. Kids in pods, memory archives, dream harvesters. It's a pipeline. It funnels pure emotion into a machine designed to grow that thing. They want to release it. Let it breathe in the park full of guests. Let it spread. No one would resist. I thought of the tunnels, the silent laughter, the framed shards. But why now? Why pull me back underground? Jonathan closed his eyes. Because I tried to destroy it. I tried to shut it down remotely from within the archives. I hit the override switch. It triggered internal alarms. That lab technician, you saw her. She did not want us to leave alive. I need you to help me expose it. He met my gaze. We can't let them unleash it, not in a closed park, not in an open one. I believed him, but I needed proof, something we could show the world. Where is the core, the heart of it? He shook his head. We only accessed the interface, but the core is deeper, beneath Section B7, in the old utility tunnels under those flow tanks and deep archives. We'd have to cross under Main Street Utilities, near the old steam tunnel. It leads under Sleeping Beauty Castle. His words landed like a stone in my stomach. We'd have to go back in, and we'd have to gather proof. We left the cab a few blocks from the park exit, walking silently in the darkness. The plan formed in my head slowly, carefully. Jonathan pulled out a small USB drive and showed me his phone screen. It contained encrypted logs, brainwave readouts, procedure manuals, names of lab staff, timeline markers, enough to demonstrate at least Section 0's existence. But the original entity data definition level source was deeper. It was likely on that console he shut down. We go back, he said. We get that data, we escape, we go public. The interior of the park was even more eerie now. The entrance gates were locked tight, but the maintenance gates still stood. Jonathan swiped the badge. It worked. The guard was gone. Inside, the ride speaking track piped overhead soft children's laughter, mechanical cheers. But now, there was also the echo of something else, a low pulse, like a heartbeat. We moved quickly, retracing our steps past Adventureland corridors. The elevator was still online. Jonathan used another override code to open it. It descended. The ride clamor faded away. The hallway beyond was pitch dark. We switched on our lights and the corridor stretched infinitely. Jonathan doubled over, scanning a mobile blueprint of the deep level. We go right at memory storage. Dream Harvest Center should still have framing cables. We'll follow those to the engine area. Stay quiet. We passed the lockers again. He paused only long enough to slide the USB into his pocket. Then we pressed on, turning deeper into zones of Section 0 none of park life could see. We neared Dream Harvesting Center. The door was open, its red alert lights still flashing. The engineer station was empty. The salvation pods stood idle, their lids closed. The triangular cylinder hummed softly, tubes dark. Jonathan scanned the air. They rerouted the isolation protocols, he whispered. We'll follow these leads. He pointed to brackets gripping overhead cables. We ducked under piping. A corridor junction led deeper. Lights flickered above a door labeled Deep Core Access B7A. This one was locked, but Jonathan hit the override key twice, and it slid open slowly. Beyond, the space widened again. Tens of meters overhead, ceiling support beams sliced through darkness. a series of walkways perched above vats of dark liquid. A black pulse glowed below, reflecting faintly upward like obsidian oil, rippling. At the far wall was the engine console dead center in the chamber. It was bigger this time, not just a desk. It looked like a futuristic instrument cluster, pulsing in readiness. And behind that, in a tall containment cylinder, was the original entity. The shape was humanoid, but with no defined features, frozen in black silhouette, two circular protrusions at the head ears. But the form stood in silence. It was dormant but alive. I stared. Jonathan exhaled. "That's it," he whispered. I reached forward, pressing the console. The touch woke statistics, waveforms, operation logs. Data flowed, blueprints of dream arch synthesis, correlation algorithms linking ride patterns to emotional response, all targeted at one deliverable: wake the entity. Jonathan hurried to plug the USB into a port near the console. Files began copying. A timer ticked. Estimated full dump, 3 minutes. We had seconds. Suddenly, alarms sounded. Red strobes lit the vault. The containment cylinder's fluid churned, creating waves across the figure's face. The thing's form shifted, head tilting toward us. But the truth was out. A whistleblower lawyer advised caution. They can't legally silence you now they burned that bridge. But keep public attention alive. Release something new. Tie it to the public experience. We decided to go back one last time. Not into the tunnels for evidence, but into the park itself, publicly. We filed an open records request with the city to film a protest. On day 6, we held a press conference at Disneyland's public gates. Journalists surrounded us. A projector screened drone footage of interior tunnels, footage of the Dream Engine, locked-off containment door scenes, screen grabs of lab technicians, Google Earth tags showing sealed access routes. Attorneys filed suits. Lafayette Park-style demonstrations were planned. Local civic leaders called for park audits. Social pressure became a wave. Ratings dropped on Disney executives. Rumors circulated of investor pushback, and public trust soured. Behind the scenes, the original entity stirred. We learned it had a contingency protocol. If systems shut down, it would integrate via Wi-Fi networks, pulling ambient data to feed itself. That meant release. Nothing would stop it. A desperate Disney issued a massive PR campaign claiming everything was an elaborate narrative experience, that pods were art installations, and the original entity was a virtual atmosphere generator. That didn't quell the leak. Anonymous insiders posted internal recordings of test failures, technicians quitting on camera, children asking for the man in the glass. That phrase alone fueled nightmares on YouTube live streams. The week of May 12, 2026 saw sweeping public hearings. Jonathan testified under oath. I presented structural diagrams, dream chamber photos, videos. New legislation was introduced, forced transparency into psycho-emotive technologies and ban on offline emotional data collection. AI-driven mood systems were restricted. Disney's board convened. They agreed to scrap the original entity program, publicly apologize, dissolve Section 0. They created a fund for affected families, those recorded, memory archived. A memorial was opened on Main Street marked for lost innocence. The original entity containment cylinder was sealed and entombed beneath locked steel doors. City oversight mandated for 25 years. We started with a fictional horror, but the undercurrent is real. Institutions that shape our emotions, guide our memories, and orchestrate our happiness hold enormous power. When unsettling technologies are hidden behind joy, control can masquerade as entertainment. This story reminds us, the sweetest smile may hide the darkest intent. We must value transparency and ethics in emotional design, especially in immersive media. When curiosity leads to doors unseen, we can either walk away or walk through, to ensure truth shines through the shadow. Challenge curated joy. Demand accountability for hidden influence. Protect emotional autonomy in every pixel, scent, and memory.